Kyle Klingman with Track Wrestling. We are going to California. Shannon Williams-Yancey now. It used to be Shannon Williams. Now it's Shannon Yancey. She was a 4-time world silver medalist, 7-time world team member. Now she's a teacher and a water polo coach. We'll get into that. Shannon, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're going back to the start. Your father was a wrestling coach. I'm assuming that's how you got started.
Yes, that's exactly right. So I shouldn't say he was a wrestling coach yet. So he wrestled when he was in high school, and that was like his, claim to fame. And growing up, I always wanted to play football because I would always play with the boys out in the street, neighborhood kids, and I was better than most of them. And so every year he would sign my brother up for Pop Warner football, and he'd sign me up for cheerleading. And every year I'd beg him to put me in football instead of cheerleading, and he just wouldn't do it. And so then when I got to high school, I said, well, I will go join the team. You can't stop me because it's high school. I can go play any high school sport I want. So I walked up to the coach and I asked him if I could play football for him. And he said, absolutely. So I went home and told my dad, and he just was not having it. So he just convinced me that, the guys out there are going to be twice my size. And if they knew I was a girl, they're going to come after me. He said, if you want to challenge yourself, why don't you try wrestling? He said, at least that way it's the same weight class. It's a great sport. It's great self-defense. There's a referee out there to make sure you don't get injured. Everything's safe. I'll let you do that if you really want to challenge yourself. So I happened to mention it to the captain of the team, and just just having conversation. And then for 2 weeks, every day, he said, are you coming out? Are you coming out? We're practicing. Come out after school. Let's go. And so if it weren't for him, I probably wouldn't have done it. But he hounded me every day because I nonchalantly mentioned him, but I was thinking about it. So my first day going out for the high school team, it was my junior year. And the coach, right when I walked in, was just like, what is this girl doing in my room? Like, you could just tell he was not happy about me being there. And I was a softball player. I was a 4-year varsity softball player, and I was a cheerleader at the school. And so he's just like, why does she want to be in here? Right? Because this is back in 1987. And so right away that first day, he put me on with the best kid that was close to my weight, put him with me and said, go wrestle her. And so I think his idea was if I got beat up enough, I wouldn't come back. But I remember walking out of the room that day and my hair was like this big and I was all sweaty and red. Walking out of the room, I was just like, that was awesome. And I loved it. And I went back every day. And I would say within about a month's time, he started becoming a fan of mine. And then, but I'd say halfway through the season, he was my biggest fan, and he loved me being there. And he really worked with me and helped me improve. And he made me captain of the JV team, and then pulled me up to varsity the following year. And so it was a great experience. And what I loved about my high school experience is that all the guys on the team were super cool, and they didn't treat me any differently. And I felt a part of the team, but I also never felt like I had to conform to them, because back when I was wrestling, I never even saw another girl wrestling. In all the tournaments we went to, up and down Southern California, I never saw another girl wrestling. And so as far as I knew, I was the only one. But I refused to act like a boy, look like a boy, cut my hair, talk like them, walk like them. I was just like, I'm a girl and I'm still going to come here and kick your butt. So it was a lot of fun.
I'm fascinated with this part of the history of wrestling, how women get into it, and just the pioneering efforts, which you clearly were. Did it feel like you were breaking new ground at the time?
At the time, I didn't feel like I was breaking new ground. I just felt like I was following my passion and following something that was calling my name, to do something different and to give myself something more challenging. Because I loved being involved at school and I loved playing sports, but it was just that winter season. You had soccer, you had basketball, and I really wasn't interested in either one of those. So I didn't know it would be so groundbreaking. I didn't know I was going to be a pioneer. I was just following my dream of doing something really cool, and happened to fall in love with the sport.
Was there chatter about it? Did you catch crosstalk, what people were saying about you being out?
Actually, I had such a great experience at my school. And like I said, as a cheerleader. So once I started wrestling and once everybody started hearing about me doing so well out on the mat and that I was beating all the boys, then the cheerleaders, typically the cheerleaders go to the basketball games in the winter. But all of a sudden, that a lot of them were my friends and my teammates on the cheer squad. So they're like, okay, we're going to split the squad in half. Half's going to wrestling, half's going to basketball. So then we had cheerleaders there. And then we started getting more spectators because they wanted to see what this girl was all about. So fortunately, I never really got anybody saying anything bad. I just felt like I had a lot of supporters and a lot of people who thought it was cool. And it inspired me to train harder and do my best. I'd say probably the worst thing that ever happened to me was when I was wrestling a kid. It was my first year, and he had cut a bunch of weight. And so this is at a match against another school. And when we were wrestling, I remember I had a 2-on-1 arm bar on him. So I was riding on top of him, pulling the arm in, and he vomited on me. So I jumped up and I was like, held my hand out like, oh my gosh. And I guess my dad said somebody in the stands was saying, oh, she probably broke a nail. And I was like, no, your player just threw up all over me. But other than that, I just feel like, because I was pretty upset when I heard about that. Why did they have to assume that just because I'm a girl, I broke a nail and I was going to act like that? But that kid, and then I ended up beating that kid. And I know that poor kid got harassed quite a bit. For some reason, I heard a lot of stories about that match. But it always made me feel bad because I wanted to be the best that I could be. I wanted to go out there. I wanted to win. But I really did not like beating the boys because I knew it wasn't fun for them to get beat by a girl and then have to hear it from their teammates. But I feel like for the most part, the boys that I beat went back to the training room and trained even harder and became really good wrestlers. So I think it pushed them to be better.
So based on what you said, it sounds like your experience hasn't been some of the other girls' experience where they really had to get through some trials and tribulations and really break through some personal barriers. Yours is pretty positive. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty positive, but I think also it's just the kind of person I am. I always see the silver lining and I see everything in a positive light. It's just kind of my disposition. Like I said, the wrestling coach was not a fan of mine for the first part, may have been the first month or two, but I just kept at it. And he put that tough kid on me and really worked me hard thinking I was going to quit. But yeah, it didn't take long before I had the coach who really liked me being there. I had my dad who wanted me there. My mom never came to see me wrestle. She said it made her too nervous. But yeah, no, I had it. And all my classmates were really cool about it and they just wanted to come out and watch.
Is that a pattern you've seen over your life that people are drawn to you? And if they maybe weren't warm to you at first, they warm up to you eventually?
Yes, because I make everybody my friend.
How do you do that? Is that something you've just had?
Yeah, I think it's just crazy. I always think about that. I'm like, I've always had that positive outlook on everything. And I don't know. I really don't know where I get it from because I didn't have a great home life. My parents got divorced when I was young and my mom got remarried to a man who was not very kind to me. So I ended up living with my dad from 7th grade on and he worked full time. He didn't know how to raise a daughter. So I pretty much just raised myself, but my dad always gave me love, support. He was there for everything that I did. But yeah, we didn't have money. He was a plumber. So he was laid off all the time during, in the late 80s. I think it was like, it was a union thing where you worked a job and then you were, with the union, you went on this list and he had to wait for his name to come back up. So yeah, I don't know, but I feel like maybe that's been part of why I'm so appreciative of everything that I have.
Just as fascinating how you get in the sport in those early years. How do you get in the sport when it's just getting started for women at the World Championships? So the United States goes for the first time in 1989. You make a world team in 1990. How do you have the thought that this is something I would like to do?
Well, I had no idea. So that's a great story in itself. So when I graduated high school, I just thought, okay, well, this is it for me. I guess I'm done wrestling. So the junior college that I went to, that was there in my, the next city over. So right from my hometown, I went to one of the wrestling practices and I just knew I wouldn't be wrestling in college because those men, first of all, they were men, but they're all over the age of 18. They had that man strength, but most of the wrestlers at 118 were cutting from like 135. And I'm a natural 115 pounder. So, so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go talk to the coach and see if I can keep stats for him. At least that way I can stay involved with wrestling. So I did that for a year and I thought that would be it. So I was keeping stats. I was halfway through my freshman year and my dad said, hey, I found out about this all girls wrestling tournament. It's in Vallejo. Do you want to go? And I remember my first reaction was like, hell yes, let's go. Like, I miss wrestling. I want to start training again. I get to go compete. But then in the back of my head, I remember thinking, I've never wrestled a girl before. This is going to be really weird. And what if I lose to a girl? I'm going to feel really bad about myself. Because it was always like, before I felt like I hated losing. But if I did lose, I always knew that I was wrestling guys who might be bigger and stronger. But yeah, so I was like, okay. I just remember thinking it was just so strange and unusual for me to go compete against a girl because I had never done that before in wrestling in 2 years. And so we went to this tournament. My dad and I flew up and we get there and there's all kinds of girls, but they just look different from a lot of wrestlers. And it looked like a lot of them knew each other. And that's where I met Afsoon for the first time. That's where I met Trish for the first time. And while I was wrestling in my matches, I noticed a couple girls just kept trying to kick at my feet. And I was like, why are they trying to kick me? Like, I don't even know. And they just wrestled differently. And I thought, well, maybe it's because they're girls, whatever. But then as the day went on, I started realizing that there were a bunch of judo girls there. Like, they were judo from like the national team trying to make this crossover. And I was just thinking, well, that's kind of strange. Like, why do they want to be here wrestling? And then at the end of the turn, so I won my bracket. So I beat all the girls I had to wrestle. And then the tournament director came up to me and said, congratulations, you're now qualified to go to Sweden for the world championships. You know, you got to start raising your money because you have to pay for yourself. I didn't care about that. I was just like, I'm going to Sweden? I'd never even been on a plane prior to that trip. So I hadn't been out of the state. Well, I guess I did a road trip. But anyways, hadn't traveled much at all. So the thought of, you know, flying to another country, I was super excited. But yeah, at that time we had to fundraise our own money. So I remember going door to door, business to business, telling them my name, who I was, you know, that I wrestled in high school. I just made the world team, you know, I'm the girl that USA is sending over but I need to raise money so I can get my flight. And I had to hit up all my relatives. So little by little, I earned the money to be able to afford to go. And then we get over to Sweden and USA Wrestling has sent us with cotton sweats, like what you have on, like a hoodie that said USA and sweatpants. And I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, this is so cool. It says USA on it. And then we show up and the other teams are like decked out in like really nice nylon sweats and they all have their own coaches and they all, you know, just come with this entourage. And USA Wrestling, I don't even know if we had a coach that year. I'm trying to think. I don't even know who they sent us with, to tell you the truth. Maybe one of the other girls remembers, but it really wasn't like an official, this is our women's coach. It was just somebody that said, hey, you want to take these girls? And so anyways, yeah, so I competed in that. And that year I took second place at the World Championships, my first year being there. So that was kind of cool. But I remember being up on the stands, you know, and they're doing the national anthem and giving us our medals. So they gave us our medals and then they came out and everybody who won first, second, and third, they gave us a kitchen appliance. I thought that was pretty funny. Like, what am I supposed to be in the kitchen? Like, I don't understand what's going on right now. But that was back in 1990. So I don't think that was the one and only time we ever got kitchen appliances.
Was that alarming when that happened?
Yeah, I think I was just in shock when it happened. And I was like probably thinking, oh, cool. You know, I'm 18 years old and I don't own that much yet. So cool, I'll take this home. But then when you really thought about it, you're like, oh, kitchen appliances. Okay. I don't know. But yeah, so then the following year, they sent us with some better sweats. Like they actually had zippers and they were nylon and nice sweats. And then I think it was maybe my third year on the USA team, they started paying for us to go for all of our tournaments. And then about that time, I think is when I got Sunkiss sponsored me. So then that paid for my local tournaments. And then USA paid for the international tournaments. And then I'd say 3 or 4 years into it is when we started getting stipends. So I feel like every year it just got better and better. But to think about where we started off, it was, definitely like, okay, we're going to send a girls team, but not a whole lot of thought was put into it.
Why do you think things got better? Was there a reason behind it, or was it just a natural progression of why it had to happen?
Oh, I'll tell you exactly why. And her name is Trish Saunders. So her and I, we served on the USA Wrestling Committee, and we were part of the Athletes Advisory Board. So we'd go to the board meetings, and she's very smart. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to her, but
She's awesome.
she's amazing, and she just knows her stuff, and she knows the rules, and and because her husband was on the national team and she got to see what he was doing and how he was supported, she fought tooth and nail for everything we had. I was just there as her backup person to, have a presence that we're both here fighting for these things. But she knew exactly what to say. She knew exactly what to do. And I would say the people on the board thought of me as the nice one. I was always the one that came in smiling and I know I even would hear some of the people on the board talk badly about her, about how she was a bitch and she's this or she's that, because she wasn't there to make friends. She was there to fight for what we needed. And I tried to play mediator. I tried to be a presence with her. We're fighting for these things, but I tried to make nice with everybody else too. So they would, appreciate and accept us women wrestlers. But Trish was a huge part of it. USA Wrestling, I think they just got some different officers. What do you call them? Like the president and, the people running USA Wrestling. I think they just slowly got some better people in there that were more supportive. And then a couple other things happened. We got coaches that supported us and who wanted to coach us. And that was Roy Oliver and Mike Duro. They wanted to be there. Like at the beginning, it was kind of coaches that maybe wanted to coach a national team, but they wouldn't choose them for the men. So it's like, oh, well, you can go coach the women. But Roy Oliver and Mike Duro, they loved us, and we had so much fun with them, and they were our coaches year after year after year. And then we started getting the consistent training of going out to the Olympic training centers before we'd go compete internationally. And I retired by the time this happened, but I really believe that Steiner has made a huge impact for the women. Because he could coach any team he wanted, men or women, but he's been such a believer and a supporter of the girls. So yeah, it's just getting the right people. But at the beginning, I'll tell you, Trish Saunders was the one who fought for every little thing that we got.
Well, you said in 1990 you were 18, and then you kind of made a career out of this. Was it your career? Did you work while you were training? How did that work for the next 7 years?
Good question. So I was in college. I started at the JC, so that wasn't hard at all. And then I went to Chico State for my bachelor's, and I was getting it in physical education, exercise phys. So all of my professors were coaches and former athletes. So when I told them what I was doing, they just thought that was the most amazing thing, and they were very happy to send me with my work. So I could do a lot of traveling during the time that I was in school. I would just miss a couple weeks here, a couple weeks there, but I always had people supporting me. So it was something that I was able to do. And then for the last 2 years of my career, I was teaching. And that's when I realized okay, this is really hard to balance a full career. And I was getting ready to get married. And and I think after 8 years, I was all the way up until I was 28 is when I retired. It was a lot to be gone on the road. And, you probably have done a lot of traveling. It's not always the best hotels they put you up in or the accommodations. And so things it just ran its course where I felt like I can't be doing this all the time, but I want to still give back. And that's when I decided that I wasn't enjoying it enough to make it to have a full-time career and train full-time. And that's when I started coaching.
You mentioned that you have a sunny disposition. You see the silver lining. You have 4 silver medals. Was it ever hard not to get the gold? Can you see the silver lining in that?
Oh, no. What is the silver lining? No, that is that's just the worst. Every time I think about it. In fact, the last one that I took second place in, I had teched her in the first 2 minutes of our match. So I was really excited, but she did get better. She was really good. She had some great throws, which is I'm not so good at that because I attack the legs. And if you're constantly attacking, they use your momentum. But what happened was the night before, I just came down with the worst stomach pain. I was up all night crying and I didn't know what was wrong. And my stomach just felt like it was being twisted in knots with razor blades. And the trainer was up with me all night just trying to get me to feel better, but she kept saying, I can't give you anything because they'll drug test you. And then I think it was 4 a.m. when she's like, actually, I can give you some what did she give me? Like Tylenol PM or something like that. But then that next day I was just so groggy. I didn't feel right. I didn't sleep. I was in pain. And so I just wish if I could do that one all over again, I would be very pleased, because I was definitely, that was the year I felt like I came in strong. I had great matches. I trained hard. It was my year to do it. But yeah, no, not really a silver lining in that. But the only silver lining is I loved my career, and I loved the traveling, and I loved the people I met along the way. And I guess as far as the other years that I took second, I tended to make it my practice of be the first one at practice, be the last one to leave, put in the extra sprints at the end, put in the extra drilling after the coach, wraps things up. Let's, stay. And wherever I was, I'd say most of my teammates were done, but there was just always a couple that would stay and put in the extra work. So I tried to take that and pass it on to my students, my children. I think when you're putting in all that extra work and you're doing it and your opponents are not, that gives you that advantage. Even if it is only in your head, you step out on that mat knowing I train harder than you. This is my match, this is my year. So just that's been instilled in me. It just didn't pan out all the way through.
When you were competing and winning world medals, did you feel like you were being recognized for it? Did you feel like there's some media coverage for your efforts and what you're accomplishing?
Yes, 100%. I did feel that way, but it's quite different today with social media and the internet and all that. But along the way, like I said, I felt like every year we got more. And I think I was the first female athlete for wrestling that ASICS sponsored. So that was really, and they made me a highlight video, because back then people didn't have technology to make a highlight video. So USA Wrestling just had film from different tournaments. So they just turned it over to their guy and said, hey, we need a highlight film for her. And she's being sponsored by ASICS. And I think it was in 1994, I won a big award for the belt series for having the most points and winning the most tournaments that year. So, and then, being asked to be on the advisory committee for USA Wrestling. Yeah, I felt like I did. I felt like I was recognized in a lot of things with local papers, news. I was on the news a couple times. But today it's so different. Everything you do, you can have it, out there for everybody to see.
And then you stayed on 1 year after you retired in 98 from competition, and you helped coach the 99 world team. And they won the world championships that year as a team. It's the only time.
I did get the ring. I got the ring.
What was that? That had to be awesome to be part of that.
It really was. It was such a magical year. And the coaching staff was great. The girls were great. It was a little, it took me a minute to transition into that, because I was just their teammate. And then I was there coaching them so quickly. But I felt like everybody was receptive and everybody was just, getting along. And it was just the perfect storm to win that year. And yeah, very exciting that I could say I coached a world team.
And then you pretty much got out after that, didn't you?
No, I coached internationally for quite some time. I just didn't do the seniors. I did a lot of the junior cadets.
What's your involvement right now with wrestling?
Well, I just joined the advisory committee for California Wrestling for Hall of Fame. And I still teach wrestling to my students. And I was coaching a little bit when my daughter was in middle school. And I've always told, so where I'm at now, the school district has always begged me to coach. We need you, we need you. And every year we get more and more girls. And we actually have some really great wrestlers around here. But I just would say, my girls are so busy, because my girls, ever since they were babies, they've been competitive swimmers, competitive soccer players, and basketball players. So we were just super busy all the time, and I was running them, teaching full time, running them around to all their practices and their games. So I just kept telling them, well, when my kids get older, or my kids are in high school, or if my kids start wrestling, then I'll start coaching. But it just hasn't happened. So then my daughters are water polo players, and so I decided to join the coaching staff 4 years ago. So I'm like, I'll just coach JV, make it easy, just because I'm there with my kids. I'm not away from them. I love coaching, and I love working with teenagers. So that I caught on to quickly, and very successful seasons. And then this past year, the varsity coach just retired, and he sat me down. He's like, "You're the one to do it. You know these girls, you know our program. I really endorse you to go for the job." So I'm doing this probably for another few years. And then maybe once my kids are grown and gone, I'll finally get to coach wrestling.
But how crazy is this, that Afsoon Johnston, you, Tricia Saunders, who you mentioned, all world medalists, all on world teams at the same time. Now you all have daughters that play soccer in the same league, and you're not even in the same area. How does that happen?
I know, it's unreal, because they're, you know why? Because they have competitive mamas, and we get them the best training and the best teams, and our kids put in the extra time in the backyard every day, out at the field, doing the, privates. So yeah, I think because they have competitive parents, because they're playing at a very high level.
Is that fun to see them?
Yes, I love to watch them compete. I absolutely, I get no, I can't think of anything I enjoy more than watching them.
And they got that drive from you, and it sounds like your husband was a bodybuilder too.
Yes, both my girls are very physical and very competitive and very cute.
So where did they get more drive from, like the competitive drive, you or your husband?
Probably me. Yeah, I mean, he's super competitive too, and he was a great athlete growing up, but I know we've coached together, and he was the one who's more like politically correct. We got to play everybody. We got to do this. We got to do that. We got to make this right for, the parent. And I was like, but we need to win this game. He's like, no, we don't. So yeah, definitely me. So
it sounds like you're turning into Tricia Saunders from back in the day.
Yes. Yeah, probably. Yeah, she inspired me. I learned from the best.
What do we have to continue to do? I mean, you guys broke so much ground to get to this point where we really are in a good place, but we have a lot more work to do. What kind of things can we do to continue that momentum?
Honestly, I feel like we just need to make sure we're treating our female athletes as well as we're treating the male athletes, and making them a priority. And I think that's true with all sports, right? You kind of look at what the men have and as far as pay. Although I think USA Wrestling does a good job with stipends. I don't know about endorsements, but I think just having that support, and I know it's going to take a huge financial support too, because, women, we reach a certain age and we know we got to get jobs, and we've got to, want to start our families, and then we have kids, and how do we balance that out? But so I think it just comes from a lot of support from the top down.
Do you still follow it, wrestling?
I do, maybe not as closely as I should, but I'm friends with a lot of people through social media, and I'll get on and I, everything's on the internet these days. So yeah, I'll take a look at things. But as far as going to the big tournaments, I haven't done that in a while. I did for a long time before kids.
Are your kids proud of your accomplishments?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they are. They love to tell people that. And then I also competed on American Gladiators. I don't know if you remember that television show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they like to tell kids that story. And then every year during the wrestling unit, I'll grab a squirrely kid, some kid who's popular and loud and class clown. And I'll take that kid and show some moves on him and throw him around a little bit. And then all the kids at the school are like, don't mess with Mrs. Yancey. And they like those stories.
How'd you get on American Gladiator?
So at the time, I was living with my boyfriend, who happened to be a coach for Lassen Junior College. And so we're constantly training wrestling. And then he said, oh, I found out there's going to be a tryout for American Gladiators, and it's in Reno. So it was like 3-hour drive. And he said, let's go try out. And it was supposed to be the day that we were spending Valentine's Day together, because he had to work in the evenings. So, but I gave it up. I'm like, okay, we'll just, forego our dinner plans and for Valentine's Day, and I'll go watch you do this thing. Because he watched the show, American Gladiators. I really didn't. So the day that we were getting ready to make the drive, I was like, I don't want to just watch him. So last minute, I grabbed my own clothes, my tennis shoes, my workout clothes. I'm like, I might as well try out too. I mean, if you're going to try out, I might as well try out. So there's like 400 people there trying out. And they chose 4 men and 4 women. And I made the cut, and he did not. So that was kind of sad. I was always making boys sad.
Who do you think helped you the most with your development as a wrestler?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, there's just so many people I can name. First of all, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the captain of the high school team, Rex Delk. He changed my life forever, because if he wouldn't have stayed on me every day, I never would have gone out. My dad's been the biggest supporter. And then, like I said, my dad was a wrestler in high school, but then once I started wrestling, he was at, parents who don't miss a game. My dad was the kind of dad that never missed a practice. He was there for every practice. He would wake me up in the middle of the night. I remember this move. Let me show you. Drag me out of bed to show me moves. And then when I left high school, he stayed on. He stayed on. He would go to practice even though I wasn't there training anymore. He just became a part of the regular staff, and he coached high school wrestling for many years, even after I was gone. So my dad, huge supporter. Like I said, the two coaches, Roy Oliver, Mike DeRoe, they were so amazing to us. So much love for both those men. And the boyfriend at the time, I guess he was a huge supporter too, because he was a wrestling coach, and he kind of got me on the right track as far as training. Because where I lived in Southern California, I was always just going to local high schools to train. And once I moved up to Northern California with him, he was a wrestling coach. So he taught me how to eat properly. He taught me how to train. He taught me how to compete. So yeah, a lot of people along the way.